The garden that blooms at night. The village did not exist on any map, yet it existed in memory, in nightmares, and in the smell of decay that clung to the air like a curse. Gulshan-e-Khamosh appeared only when one stopped looking for it, when the road curved too sharply and the fog grew too thick to turn back. Ion arrived there just before dusk, his car tires crunching over gravel that felt older than time itself. The air changed the moment he stepped out. It was sweet, cloying, heavy, like flowers rotting under the sun. The house he had inherited from his grandmother stood alone at the edge of the village, leaning slightly as if tired of standing. Behind it stretched a vast garden enclosed by a rusted iron fence, its bars twisted inward as though something had once tried desperately to escape. The flowers inside were impossible. Their colors did not belong to nature: black roses that swallowed light, blue lilies pale as drowned skin, red blossoms so dark they appeared wet even in shadow. As Ion stared, he felt an unmistakable sensation crawl up his spine. The flowers were not swaying in the wind. They were leaning toward him. That night, sleep came unwillingly. The smell of flowers seeped through the walls, through his lungs, into his dreams. He dreamed of soil filling his mouth, choking him, forcing its way down his throat as roots wrapped around his arms and legs, pulling him into the earth. Flowers burst from his chest with wet, tearing sounds, blooming through ribs and skin as he screamed without sound. When he woke, his sheets were soaked, not with sweat, but with damp soil smeared across the fabric as if someone had dragged the earth into his bed. His hands shook as he wiped dirt from beneath his fingernails, though he could not remember digging. At dawn, he found footprints beneath his window. Bare footprints, leading from the garden fence straight to his room. The villagers avoided him. When he tried to speak, their eyes slid away, their mouths tightening as though stitched shut by fear. One old woman finally whispered the truth through cracked lips, saying his grandmother had fed the garden well, before crossing herself and fleeing as though chased. Curiosity clawed harder than fear, and by evening Ion found himself standing before the rusted gate. The moment he stepped inside, the temperature dropped. The air felt damp, alive. The flowers leaned closer, their petals trembling as though sensing prey. He reached out and touched a black rosé. It was warm. It pulsed faintly beneath his fingers, like a living organ. When he pulled away, the flower released a soft sigh, and thick red sap dripped down its stem, sticky and unmistakably like blood. Beneath his feet, the soil shifted, rising and falling as if breathing. Days passed, though time felt wrong there, stretched and thin. Ion's body began to change. Dirt clung permanently beneath his nails. His cough worsened until he spat petals into the sink, tiny fragments of unknown flowers, still moist and twitching faintly. At night, whispers seeped from the ground, threading through his thoughts until he could no longer tell which were his own. Hungry, they said. Dry soil. More. Compelled, shaking, he dug. Just a little, he told himself. Beneath the first layer of earth lay bones, human bones arranged with deliberate care. Skulls were placed beneath flower beds, jaws forced open, empty sockets staring upward as roots threaded through their mouths and eye holes. Some bones still wore flesh. Fresh, warm. Ion staggered back, vomiting violently. Where his vomit hit the ground, a new flower bloomed instantly, pink, delicate, shaped unmistakably like a human face frozen in a smile. In the locked cellar, he found the journals. His grandmother's handwriting trembled across the pages, but the words were clear. Flowers are mouths. They drink pain. They remember screams. She had learned early that the soil demanded nourishment, that blood made the blooms brighter, that fear made them grow faster, that bodies made them eternal. The garden protected the house, she wrote, but it must be fed. Always fed. Ion understood then why the village still stood, why generations had passed without disaster. The garden had been satisfied. Until now. The first scream came from the village well. A child vanished without a trace. The next morning, a small white flower bloomed near the fence, its petals curved like a crying face. Ion tried to leave, but the road had vanished. Where the highway once lay, endless garden stretched instead, flowers pulsing and swaying as far as the eye could see. Roots cracked the earth beneath him, crawling like veins, wrapping around his ankles when he tried to run. The whispers grew louder. Gardener, they called him. Feeder, caretaker. The flowers bloomed faster now, greedier, their stems thickening, thorns sharpening. Faces began appearing in the petals, eyes opening, mouths twitching, expressions frozen in terror. At night, the soil rose in mounds, and half-formed hands pushed upward before being dragged back down, absorbed, digested. Ion resisted at first. He starved the garden, locked himself inside, boarded windows, blocked doors. The house began to rot. Walls bled sap. Floors cracked open, roots breaking through like ribs. The whispers turned into screams. He stopped sleeping. Hunger gnawed at him until his thoughts twisted. When the next villager disappeared, the flowers bloomed brighter than ever, and Ion wept as he watered them without realizing, his tears soaking into the soil like an offering. His skin grew pale, veins darkened, branching like roots beneath the surface. When he cut himself accidentally, flowers sprouted from the wound before it could bleed. In the end, there was no choice left. The garden demanded permanence. On the final night, Ion walked barefoot into the center of the flowers. The soil opened willingly beneath him. Roots pierced his flesh, threading through muscle and bone, anchoring him in place. Flowers bloomed from his chest, his mouth, his eyes, each petal fed by his terror, his pain, his screams. As the last breath left his lungs, the garden sighed in satisfaction. By morning, the village was quiet again. At the edge of the garden stood a single new flower, taller than the rest, its petals shaped like a man's face frozen in silent agony. And beneath the soil, the roots waited patiently. Hungry, always hungry. The villagers believed the garden was finally satisfied, but hunger like that never ends, it only sleeps. Weeks passed, and the flowers stood unnaturally still, their colors deeper, heavier, as if saturated with something more than blood. The wind no longer touched them. Birds avoided the sky above the house, and insects that landed on petals were never seen again. At the center of the garden, the flower that wore Ion's face began to change. Its petals thickened, hardening like flesh left too long in water. The mouth slowly opened at night, stretching wider than any human jaw should, releasing a breath that smelled of graves and crushed bones. Beneath the soil, Ion was not dead. Not fully. His thoughts still existed, stretched thin across the roots, fragmented and screaming as the garden used him like a nervous system, feeling through him, remembering through him. The first dream reached the village elder 3 nights later. He saw his own body buried upright, eyes pecked out by flowers blooming from his skull. He woke choking on soil, petals stuck between his teeth. Others followed. Nightmares spread like infection, visions of loved ones standing motionless in fields, heads tilted, mouths blooming with roses. Children woke crying that flowers were growing inside their stomachs. Livestock refused to enter fields, collapsing instead as if their legs had been cut. The ground itself grew warm, pulsing faintly under bare feet. Roots crept beneath houses, cracking foundations, wrapping around sleeping bodies like patient fingers. At the old house, the walls were gone. They had not fallen, they had been absorbed. The garden had swallowed the structure entirely, pulling bricks and wood into the soil to strengthen itself. At night, faint lights flickered beneath the earth, moving like veins of fire. Faces pressed up from below the surface, skin stretched thin, eyes rolling as roots threaded through their mouths. When the wind finally returned, it carried voices, dozens of them, layered, whispering, crying, laughing softly as if relieved to be part of something eternal. The flowers leaned outward now, no longer guarding the village but encircling it. One by one, villagers disappeared. Not suddenly, slowly. A man would wake with dirt under his nails and not remember digging. A woman would find petals growing from her scalp where hair had fallen out overnight. A child's cough would turn wet and floral, each breath releasing spores that drifted invisibly into the air. The garden did not need to drag them anymore. It was learning to grow inside them. Roots spread through lungs, stomachs, veins, turning bodies into walking soil. Those affected smiled strangely, eyes glassy, drawn toward the flowers with peaceful devotion. They walked into the garden willingly, sinking into the earth without screams, their bodies dissolving as new blooms erupted where they stood. Deep beneath the soil, Ion felt everything. He felt the roots feed. He felt the fear dissolve into acceptance. The garden whispered through him now, using his memories, his voice. It remembered how humans spoke, how they begged, how they loved. On certain nights, the flowers shaped themselves into familiar faces, mothers, children, lovers, standing just beyond the village paths, calling softly. Those who followed were never seen again, except as color added to the endless field. The garden was no longer contained. It was not a place. It was a living hunger, patient and intelligent, learning how to walk the world. By the time outsiders noticed, it was too late. Satellites showed nothing unusual, only green where green should be. Roads leading toward the area became overgrown overnight, cracks filling with vines and thorns sharp enough to tear metal. Those who entered reported dizziness, nausea, an overwhelming urge to lie down in the soil and rest. None returned. The garden spread silently, bloom by bloom, root by root, carrying Ion's consciousness with it like a seed. And somewhere beneath the earth, beneath layers of bodies and bone and memory, the garden dreamed of wider fields, richer soil, and a world that would one day kneel willingly, smiling, as flowers bloomed from every mouth.